911, where's your emergency?
I just stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children.
You stabbed yourself and killed your 2 children?
Mm-hmm.
And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him have my kid.
Now you can't take the kids away from me. These are the words Brandi Worley said to her husband at 4 a.m. on November 17, 2016, when she decided she would end her children's lives. Her marriage had fallen apart after her repeated affair with a neighbor, and Jason, her husband, had even turned to Reddit to seek help after feeling trapped for so long. When he asked for a divorce, Brandi took the cruelest path possible. Instead of facing the fact that she could lose her kids in a custody battle, she decided it was better to end their innocent lives so nobody could ever have them. After killing her children and attempting to end her own life as well, she called 911 and in a chilling, calm voice confessed to the horrific scene that was happening in her home. While her kids lay lifeless on the bedroom floor and she was injured in the living room talking to 911, Jason was sleeping in the basement, unaware that his life had been completely destroyed. This is the story of Brandi Worley and how a cry for help on Reddit became a tragedy. On Friday, October 28, 2016, a user by the name of jasoninjell logged onto Reddit and wrote a new post on the relationship advice subreddit. I caught my wife cheating on me over a year ago. I stayed with her for the sake of our children, but I haven't been able to get it off my mind since. On a long and detailed post, jasoninjell described how over a year earlier he had found his wife and mother of his kids was having an affair with their neighbor. However, after confronting her about it, the affair seemed to continue, and the user describes how he can't stop thinking about what it is that he does that makes her so unhappy. Jasoninjell, as we would later find out, was Jason Worley. Jason was born in 1986, making him 30 years old in 2016, and since 2009, he had been married to Brandi. Jason and Brandi had 2 children together, Tyler, born in 2009, and Charlie, born in 2013. The family lived in Darlington, Indiana, and were as happy as any family could be. Or at least, that's what it seemed like from the outside. At home, however, things had started to grow tense since 2015, when Jason discovered Brandi was having an affair. Jason worked as a software engineer, and in 2015, he picked up a new project and his responsibilities had grown. As his workload increased, and he put in over 60 hours a week, he noticed that this stress was affecting his relationship with his family. It was in May of 2015 that I noticed that she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day present, and didn't want me to ruin the surprise. About a week later, she came to me and told me that she felt guilty keeping a big secret from me, and told me that she was having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my present. However, as nice as the surprise seemed, Brandi's behavior was becoming more and more suspicious. She'd put her phone away suddenly if he came into the room. She was always texting, and she would smile at her messages, but when asked who she was texting, she always said, nobody. Jason was growing anxious at the thought that something wasn't right, and he decided to invade Brandi's privacy and check her phone when she went to the shower, before it was locked, to find out what was really going on. And that's when he found out that the person she was texting was indeed their neighbor, the contractor. However, the messages were not about the home office she was planning to build for Jason. In his Reddit post, Jason says that he didn't want to think that his wife would ever hurt him, and since there were no more messages on her phone, he tried to brush it off as some perverted joke. However, he would later find out that the reason there were no more messages was because Brandi was automatically deleting her messages every few days. As time went by, the neighbor would spend more and more time at the couple's home, but his office didn't seem to be moving forward. That's when Jason decided to cross the privacy line once again and follow his wife's movements through the GPS on her phone, only to find there were times when she was manually turning her location off. Jason needed to know that he wasn't just being paranoid, so he installed an anti-theft software on her phone telling her he was installing an antivirus. This way, he could manually find her phone whenever he needed to from his own device. He also set up a backup of her messages on his computer. While this is a huge invasion of anyone's privacy, regardless of being spouses, Jason got the proof he needed. The next day, my mother asked to spend some time with my 2 kids, so my wife drops them off with her and has a day to herself. I watch my wife's activity from work as she spends the day trying to meet up with a neighbor, but is unsuccessful because he's busy on another job site. Not only was Brandi trying to meet up with their neighbor, but she actually started making plans for her and Jason to hang out with the contractor, his girlfriend, and her son. It seemed that Brandi and the neighbor's girlfriend were getting along, so they decided to go to a show together. While they were at the show, Jason and the neighbor stayed at home watching the children play together, but Jason was also checking his wife's texts through the software he installed, and he saw that she was texting the neighbor while he was sitting right across from him. The nature of the messages was now clearly sexual, and they were trying to arrange a time and place to meet and have sex. Then they did something that broke Jason's heart completely. They tell each other that they love each other, and it is all I can do to not leap off the couch and knock him out. But I contain myself and continue reading the conversation unfolding in front of me. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending with him writing, "and always will be." This wasn't just a physical relationship, they were talking about love. Jason decided to confront them all when the women returned from the show. Brandi denied everything, while the neighbor's girlfriend was also in shock. However, as much as Brandi denied it all, Jason had the messages, and he showed them to her. Seeing she had been caught red-handed, Brandi admitted they were texting, but she said it was the first time they'd gone that far. Jason couldn't prove if they'd had sex or not, but there was clearly an intention to meet up for that, so he told her he'd had enough and he wanted out of the marriage. Brandi saw her whole life crumbling, and seeing that denying everything wasn't working, she adopted a more defensive approach. She blamed her husband for working too many hours. That stress had leaked into their marriage, and she felt lonely, so she turned to the neighbor for company. She also told Jason that if they got a divorce, she'd make sure he'd never get to see his children again, proving he was unfit to take care of them. When he was in high school, Jason had once attempted to take his own life, and Brandi threatened to use that to gain custody. However, that was years ago, and Jason had no trouble taking care of his children in 2016. But Brandi got in his head, and he got scared at the idea of losing them, so he began having doubts. Regardless, after many fights, they decided for a temporary separation to give themselves time and think about what their next step may be. Jason would stay in their home, and Brandi would take the children and stay at her mother's house. But things only got worse from there. Brandi took the opportunity she had, having the kids to herself, to explain what was happening without Jason. She told the children that Daddy was mad at her, and that's why they'd had to move out. Jason went to his in-laws' house to see his kids, only to find them crying and confused as to why their daddy didn't want to live with them anymore. That's when Jason realized if he were to start a divorce, Brandi would do whatever it took to keep the kids on her side and prove him unfit as a father. So in order to keep his children with him, Jason decided to stay with Brandi, burying the affair somewhere deep in his mind and trying not to think about it. His wife had won, and she knew it. Not only did she make him beg for her to stay, but she also said he had to apologize to their neighbor, since they had all become friends and their children played together often. Jason did as he was told, and stayed with Brandi for the sake of their children. But although she had sworn it was all over, he couldn't forget the affair and lived in constant fear of making her unhappy. His fears became real when he caught Brandi sending the neighbor pictures once again, months later. Brandi denied everything again and said the pictures were for him, but she made a mistake while sending them. And once again, Jason swallowed his feelings and chose to believe her and let it go. Months went by, until in October of 2016, jasoninhell on Reddit decided to share his story and ask for advice. I still think about it constantly. This is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I have a part of my brain that I can't shut off, that's always thinking. Ever since this incident, the only thing it thinks about is her and him, and if I did the right thing. Jason mentions how his job performance has been severely affected by this. He can't sleep, and he's more stressed than ever. He says he's afraid that begging her to stay with him for the kids has been a mistake, but if he were to ask for a divorce after taking her back, it would only make her more vindictive and use the children against him. Jason could sense his wife would do anything to prevent the divorce from being real. and his instinct wasn't far from the truth. Dozens of users were shocked that he was still with Brandi. The general advice was to find a good lawyer and get out of that marriage as soon as possible. In fact, her proven infidelity would help him keep custody of the children, and she couldn't stop him from seeing them. But what most users found shocking was how far Jason had gone for his kids. "I cannot believe you stayed with her. I cannot believe you begged her to stay. I cannot believe you apologized to the neighbor. Staying in a marriage for the sake of kids never works out. She's poison in your life, get rid of it, and a dysfunctional family is worse for the kids than a divorce. As for the kids believing her lies, tell them not to believe anything she says about you or you say about her." While all of this relationship advice is good-hearted, the choices someone makes in their marriage are completely personal, and cutting ties with a toxic relationship, especially one where children are involved, isn't easy. But Jason had turned to Reddit out of desperation, and although some of the comments were harsh against his choices, he managed to build up the courage to go on with the divorce. And on November 1st, jasoninhell posted an update telling everyone he was meeting with an attorney the following week. He was getting himself and his kids out of that relationship. That was the last thing jasoninhell would post on that thread.
From Indiana's news leader, Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock.
Where a mother told police that she killed her own 2 children in their family home.
And they found the 2 young children dead inside the home. We've also learned that her husband filed for divorce just yesterday. The details about why unclear, but that divorce certainly could have something to do with it. A very emotional day for both police and this small community.
November 17th, 2016. A tragic story hits the news in Darlington, Indiana. A woman killed her 2 kids after her husband asked for a divorce. The woman, Brandi Worley, had stabbed her children and attempted to take her own life while her husband slept in the basement, unaware of what was happening. Her husband, Jason Worley, a software engineer, had asked her for a divorce the day before. As soon as the story began to develop, many Reddit users who'd commented on jasoninhell's thread began to connect the dots. It all sounded too familiar. The 2 children, the divorce, Jason being a software engineer. This couldn't just be a coincidence. Speculations grew until on November 21st, jasoninhell made a comment on a subreddit dedicated to the popular YouTuber Philip DeFranco. In it, he confirmed his 2 children, Tyler and Charlie, had passed in a horrific tragedy just days earlier. His son loved watching Phil's videos, and he asked to keep him in his thoughts. Philip even made a video addressing Jason and showing his support through this difficult time. This post, written by the same user, confirmed that this was indeed the Jason from the news story about a mother killing her children. But what exactly happened that night? Just like Jason had mentioned in his last post about his relationship, he got in contact with an attorney and began the process to ask his wife for a divorce. After over a week of meetings, he was ready, and on November 15th, Jason told Brandi he wanted a divorce and that he was going to fight for the children. Brandi didn't see it coming. She thought her husband was under her thumb, but after years of walking in eggshells around her, he'd stood up to her, and after her ongoing affair, she began to realize that he had a good chance of winning custody. Brandi wouldn't have that. She wasn't going to lose her children to him. So on November 16th, she made a decision she would never be able to take back. That evening, the family had attended Charlie's dance recital together. When they came home, while Jason was fixing dinner for the children, Brandi told the family she was going to stop by Walmart to pick up some materials for one of Tyler's school projects. However, what she was really buying was a combat knife that she hid in her son's room as soon as she got back home. After dinner, the children were put to bed in their rooms, and instead of sleeping on the couch, Jason had been sleeping in the basement on an air mattress. Brandi was taking the bedroom. The Worley family went to sleep, and the house became silent. However, sometime in the middle of the night, Brandi woke up her son. She told him they were having a sleepover at Charlie's room, and led him to his sister's bedroom. While she took him, she had also grabbed the knife she had hidden that evening. Charlie was fast asleep in her bed, and when Tyler got into the room, his mother stabbed him in the neck. While she was doing that, Charlie woke up and asked her what was happening, since it was dark. Brandi told her to go back to sleep, but just a few moments later, she stabbed her as well. While her 2 children bled to death on the floor, Brandi attempted to take her life with the same knife. Badly injured and heavily affected by the Benadryl she allegedly took, she called her mother and told her what she'd done. Her mother panicked and told her she would be there as soon as she could. And after that, a hauntingly emotionless Brandi called 911.
Montgomery County 911, where's your emergency? In what town?
Darlington.
Hey, what's going on there?
I just stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children.
You stabbed yourself and killed your 2 children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's your name?
Brandi Worley.
Brandi what?
Worley.
Where are the children at?
In my daughter's room on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him find my kid.
Okay, and how old are your children?
7 and 3.
10 and 3?
7.
7 and 3?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you stab yourself at?
In the neck.
Are you armed now with the knife still?
No, it's in my children's room.
Okay, where's your husband at?
Downstairs somewhere.
Okay, what's his condition?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him.
And when you say downstairs, is he in a basement or?
Yeah.
Jason Worley was just a few feet away when the tragedy that ended his family was taking place. However, since he was in the basement, he was completely unaware that his children were dying on his daughter's bedroom floor, until he heard screams. His mother-in-law had arrived and found the 2 children and Brandi covered in blood. He rushed to the scene and saw his mother-in-law crying and screaming that the children were dead. On the couch, Jason found his wife, who looked at him and told him, "Now you can't take the kids from me." Emergency services arrived at 4:30 a.m., but there was nothing they could do to save Tyler and Charlie. Their mother had ended both their lives. Brandi Worley was taken to hospital and treated for her self-inflicted wounds, which she recovered from quickly. Once out of the hospital, she was arrested and charged with 2 counts of felony murder. She initially pleaded not guilty, planning to claim she was legally insane. However, she eventually changed her plea to guilty. On March of 2018, she was sentenced to 120 years in prison for the murder of her 2 children. During the sentencing hearing, the judge said, "Sometimes there is no explanation. Darkness is in this world, and it penetrates minds and our hearts." As of today, Brandi remains incarcerated at the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis. Jason Worley returned to Reddit on June of 2018, 3 months after his wife's sentence, but he changed his username. Jasoninhell had been deleted, he said, because he got scared when he saw the media putting his post on the news. But in this post, he updated everyone on how he was feeling. His life had been a constant struggle since he lost his children, turning towards alcohol and even contemplating ending his own life over the tragedy. But with the help of his family and friends, as well as the help he needed for his mental health, he was coping and moving forward every day, to the point where he now mentioned he considered to be doing well. Regarding the sentencing, he was brief. No sentence, however tough, would bring back his children. A death sentence would have given her what she wanted and failed to do herself, but he doubted a life sentence would change her mind, since she had always been proud of living with no regrets. Jason mentioned his in-laws had been making things hard on him. The house the family had lived in belonged to Brandi's family, so they'd kicked him out and he'd had to involve the authorities to get his things back, since they changed the locks with all of his possessions still inside. He also wrote how they'd sit in their cars watching him while he visited his children's graves, to the point of making him feel uncomfortable to go and see his kids. He ended his post by telling everyone to cherish the time they spend with loved ones, however mundane or silly what they're doing may seem, since you never know when that time can come to an abrupt ending. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like and subscribe so you can watch more content like this.